I'll tell you, man, if you're tripling to quadrupling your marketing spend and the sense of profit back to you, that's a real healthy place to be. And I know, again, unfortunately, we live in the world of real estate, and I hear numbers like, well, I got a 1 to 10 and a 1 to 15. And I'm like, it's not long-term sustainable. Like, I'm giving you the actual numbers. We consistently get a $3 to $4 return, which is great. And if I can have that consistently on a marketing channel, I'm in.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. Most people get into real estate investing with the dream of living in Miami, driving a Ferrari, all while having cash flow just come rolling in automatically. Now, while it is possible to live financially free, I think there's a few more steps between starting with your first deal to getting your first beachside apartment. Now, today's guest understands this, and he's built the systems and processes that help build that dream. Now, in his mid-20s, he built a boutique real estate investing brokerage house. And from there, he transitioned into fix and flips and wholesaling. Eventually, he took his business into a virtual space. Now, today, he serves as the co-founder of COSA Investments, one of the largest wholesale companies in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. Now, COSA is operated and managed by a U.S. virtual team that allows him to run his company while living in Mexico. Now, in addition to that, he also launched his REI Radio coaching program that is designed to teach real estate investors the marketing methods to get more deals done. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Chris Arnold to the show. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming on, man.
What's up, buddy? Glad to be here, man. Looking forward to adding some value.
Yeah, no, I'm excited too. Now, guys, if you like what Chris has to say, you can reach him via his contact page at cosainvestments.com. Okay, Chris, go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit more about your journey and how you got started in all this.
Yeah, so I've been doing real estate now for 15 years, and my journey started a little bit before that. Believe it or not, I have a master's degree in theology, so I went to seminary, so I think a lot of people scratch their head at that, and they're like, man, shouldn't you gone and been a pastor or something like that? And that wasn't really a fit for me. My passion was people, but I remember having a really kind of what I would call paradigm shift. I was finishing up my grad degree. I was sitting at Chick-fil-A just by myself, eating a chicken biscuit. I'm looking up on the wall, and I see this mural of how Kathy Truitt had built Chick-fil-A and then utilized the funds and proceeds of that company to impact the world. And that was the first time it ever really hit me like, wow, maybe I'll go into the business world rather than, let's say, something like church world, and I'll build businesses that create freedom of time and freedom of resources so I can write checks for any causes that, I want to be a part of. And so at that moment, I didn't know anything about business, right? I'm 25 years old. I haven't taken a business class in my life, but as I looked around, and of course I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, who wasn't impacted by that book? I think an entire generation was. And I said, I think real estate is going to be the vehicle that I'm looking for, because for me, I've never really been passionate about real estate. I've been passionate about utilizing it as a vehicle in order to impact the world, which is actually what gets me out of bed every day.
Excellent. So tell us what happened after that then. So you decide to focus on real estate. You're gonna help people. You're still helping people now, right? Even though you're helping people in a very different way. So what was your next step then? So you decided you're going to do this. So what happened then?
I didn't know anything better to do than go get licensed as a real estate agent. So went, took my test, got licensed, went to work for Century 21. And dude, I was the guy that was up at like 6 a.m. pulling expireds and FSBOs. This is before the companies and the automation and technology was there, where you had to like literally pull them manually one by one. And dude, my life was calling in the morning. Again, that was still when you were hitting landlines, right? You were catching people while they were on their way out the door, starting around 7:30 a.m. to about 9:20. And I'd set expireds and FSBO appointments, and I'd go out in the evening, take those appointments, and come back and input them into the MLS myself, because at that point I was just a one-man show. I was wearing every hat in the company. And so I got my start on the agency side.
Yeah. Now, would you say though that some of the grind that you had to do up front there, I mean, it's you're still doing grinding today. It's just a different type. I mean, we're doing different methods, but the technology, or rather, it's not a technology thing. It's more like the grind of reaching out, making contact, trying to get people to pick up the phone or get a return phone call even. All that stuff hasn't really changed, has it?
I would say that it actually has changed. It's funny. I know that there's a lot of things out there about the grind and the hustle, et cetera. I got to be honest with you, the longer I've been in business, the more I've actually moved away from that philosophy. I really believe it's about leveraging. One of the things that we've done really well, and what I realized early on, is I didn't want to be the smartest person in the room. And so I really have built much more of a lifestyle business in which I've empowered people to really run the day-to-day so that I can stay more on the visionary side, waking up every day, not grinding in the business, but more on the thought side and the creative side of ideas and what are we going to do next and what's the next company we want to acquire, and et cetera. And so I get what you're saying philosophically. Yeah, there's still a hustle factor there, but I can tell you, man, I really don't buy into much of the whole grind philosophy. I think that that's people that aren't willing to leverage through other people, and particularly ends up kind of being a bottleneck themselves.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm talking like the people that are just starting out, like that are at zero, that never.
You're starting out, you're to get it off the ground. Absolutely. But at some point, you're definitely be able to graduate from that and begin to leverage through the power of hiring great people in your company.
Absolutely. Which is what you do now, right? I mean, now, and reading your information, you're leveraging a group out of the States here, and are you in Mexico right now?
Yeah, I live down in Tulum, Mexico. So I'm about an hour and a half south of Cancun. And because I want to live in the Caribbean. Today, when I finish up, I'll go grab a paddleboard, go down to the beach, right? Jump on a mountain bike, whatever it be. And so I always wanted to finish my day with that type of finish line. And so I don't mind coming in and working and building a business, man, but I really do enjoy the replenishment that comes from being in a place where it's pretty much sunny every single day with blue skies. So that creates a lot of opportunity to get out and just play.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm in Cleveland right now, so whenever we get sun, it's like it's a big deal out here. I'll tell you that. So yeah, I know all about that. So I'm sure that for people listening, they're probably wondering, like, hey, wait a second, how do I get in on doing something like that? Because that sounds like something many people want to get to do, is basically leveraging other folks to help them build their business while they're doing what they're doing, right? So maybe talk a little bit more about your team and how you have it set up and what exactly they're doing.
Yeah. So total staff, between the couple companies we have roughly around 25 people. I will tell you without question, and, I always recommend people to pick up, whether it be, scaling up or traction or rocket fuel. The most important relationship the visionary has is with the actual integrator. You can call that your chief operating officer, your number two, and so forth. And so what I have found is that she's really become the barrier and the gatekeeper for me, to where most of my time, if I'm communicating, is directly with her, and then she's leading obviously all the managers that are below that. And so people often ask, like, what is one of the keys to really get to that place to have a lifestyle business? You've got to find the right chief operating officer that will take over that day-to-day and understand their importance of protecting you, because again, you shouldn't be there in the day-to-day. The further along you get in business, the greatest value you bring is just thinking. It's ideas, it's key relationships, it's vision and where you're going. And so she's done an exceptional job of really protecting my time so that I can focus on those things.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more about what exactly they're doing. So are they just handling, just like, I know you do wholesaling. So are they like reaching out to people? Are they calling on ads? Like, what exactly is the team up to right now?
Yeah. So if you're kind of taking a look at the overall leadership that we have, I mean, you're going to break your company. If, let's say, you're doing wholesale fix and flip, right? You're going to have a dispositions department, right? So we have a director of dispositions. Obviously, we have a sales team with acquisition managers and calling assistants that are taking calls, et cetera. So we have a director of sales. Then you have the marketing, right, which drives all of that. And so we have a director of marketing. And then on top of that, you have to manage all the transactions at the title company. And so we have a director of closing. So fundamentally, there are 4 directors that are managing those key departments, with the chief operating officer that all 4 of those report to. And so in my opinion, that's kind of been one of the better ways to, if you want to say, kind of bucketize your business, and understand kind of the key roles that you need to have over each of those departments. And then, of course, there's people underneath them that are, of course, reporting to them on the day-to-day stuff, whether that's a acquisitions manager or a closing coordinator or a lead manager, all of those types of positions and seats that you have to fill.
Right. And these are all US based roles too, right?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people, when they hear virtual, they think, well, you must be hiring people out of the Philippines or India or wherever. We've just always worked stateside. I love the virtual model because one of the things I realized early on with the virtual model is I was not limiting the talent of my company based on their ability to geographically commute to an office. So I kind of equate it to dating. Would you want just the opportunity to meet your potential future spouse just because they live in your area, or would it be better that you might have a greater opportunity if you were meeting people from all over the US or all over the world? And the same thing is true with your business. If you can fish from a talent pool being the entire US, it's easier to build a team because you can pull greater talent because it's a greater pond. And so, yeah, all of our VAs are US based. And when I say VA, that just simply means that we don't have an office. We have no brick and mortar. We started with that. So I know VAs, that's probably has to be defined, but we have very high level, kind of C-suite level directors and so forth that are in different states, east to west coast, all over the US.
Wow. That's excellent. I mean, hey, listen, I know how tough it is to manage sometimes people in one area, one office, let alone trying to do it across the country. So, I mean, that must be tough, but I think you're right though. I mean, my opinion anyway, having US based people it's a whole different dynamic. It's a whole different dynamic as far
when
as
I tell people this too, that was one of the fears that I had. Like, well, how do you manage someone that's not coming into your office every day? That you can't see? Again, I grew up in office world. Virtual was not around when I started. That was a very rare thing. But here's what I've realized. Virtual people, if they are raised in virtual world, and there are certain types of people, whether that be a single mom or a wife that's husband's in the military, there are these certain circumstances that require somebody to work from home, that they could never commute to an office. So they've been birthed in that world. And what I have found about those people is that they are more self-motivated, self-driven, all of those type of things than the people I ever had in the office, because they knew that in order to be successful in the virtual world, they had to learn to work without structure. So what I have found is it's actually easier to manage a virtual team that is already self-managed because they were raised that way within that world than having to deal with a team in which they need structure and a time to show up every day. So the thing I tell people is probably one of the challenges you will have is if you take in-office people and try to move them to virtual. Because now you're taking people that are used to and dependent on structure, moving them out of that. And I find that either they don't make that, or at least it takes about a year to make that transition. So all the virtual people we have were never office people. So they do fantastic. I don't ever think about working. Actually, funny enough, the opposite is true. Our people work really hard and they love what they do. And so we actually have the other problem of making sure we manage them not burning out, because they sometimes tend to not take the vacations because they work from home. And so we kind of have to force a little bit more of like, hey, back off a little bit, take a vacation, shut it down for a week, etc. That's actually been the truth with our experience.
Interesting. I mean, that's, it's funny. I'm actually reading a book right now, Barking Up the Wrong Tree. Yeah. And he talks about that. The author talks about that. It's like not to burn out your people, not to burn out your employees, because it's like you maybe get 60 hours out of them, but then they're eventually just going to get upset about being there, and they're going to start doing a bad job over time, So making them take some time off and spending time with their family or decompressing is actually a huge deal. It's a huge deal.
And that's one of the main things my chief operating officer does. She mandates, and like last year, she made a rotation where she forced them all to shut down for a week and not work. And they would still pop in a little bit. And that's just, you get talented people. They love to come in, and if they're a part of a vision and something that they really feel like is greater than themselves and is impacting and doing more than just real estate, they're passionate about it. And so that's kind of been the case with us. But talented people are who you want in your business. I think that's one of the hardest parts of growing a team. And I didn't nail that right off. That took me a long time to really get, as Jim Collins would say, right people on the bus, wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. But the great thing is when you get those right people in the right seats, man, they're self-driven, and all they really need is a common vision, and you just need to get out of their way and they'll go figure out how to do it. And so that's what it really means to be on the visionary side, is to empower them, to give them that vision and let them go out there and make it happen.
That's right. That's right. Now, one of the big things when it comes to the wholesale business is lead gen. Right,
Absolutely.
Lead gen is at the top, at the very top of the funnel. That's the hardest thing in your world. Well, I know that in your world, because you have, obviously, these people are not cheap. So the lead gen component is absolutely key, right? So of course there's direct mail, there's other ways of doing it, cold calling, whatever. But I think you have other strategies really for pulling in people, right? To really get them into that top of the funnel. Can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key thing that we've relied upon is, if you're looking at generating deals, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to prospect, which is outbound. And you name some of those things, right? Outbound is fundamentally spending time, maybe because you're starting up and you don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. So what you're left with is cold calling, text blasting, RVMing, door knocking, driving for dollars, etc. But then there's the marketing side, which I find that people really want to be on, because a lot of the approaches that I just named are really spam-based approaches. So they bog down your system, because let's pick on direct mail a little bit. Half of those people calling in on direct mail are hate calls. They're telling you never to put a direct mail in their mailbox again. And so the marketing side is generating a quality lead that is inbound. And these are things like radio and television and pay-per-click, things in which somebody sees an advertisement, they pick up the phone and they call you. And once you begin to dabble in both worlds, most people I know go, man, I'd rather just be able to make my phone ring with a quality lead than have to bother a bunch of people by text blasting them and manage, again, the labor it takes to run those systems, because they are time intensive to run those systems. Cold calling is a time intensive system. Most of them are, but if you look at something like radio, which we do, it's been without question one of the lighter systems to manage. We call it fundamentally set it and forget it. You pay your ad monthly, you answer your phone when it rings, and that's it. The radio station manages everything for you. And so once people get a taste of that type of marketing, they're like, man, I don't know that I could really go back to, dialing for dollars like I was.
It's interesting. I bet people might be listening right now. They're like, radio, they're probably saying one of two things, or maybe even both. They're saying that sounds expensive, and isn't that a bit old in the world of like Spotify and on-demand music?
You just nailed it. And so here's exactly what I'm going to tell you. Here's the paradigm shift. You ready? And that is this: radio absolutely is old, but guess what? So is your target audience. The biggest mistake I see people make is that they confuse the real demographic of real estate, particularly single family, with themselves. So do I listen to the radio? No, I got a Spotify. I stream my music. But the reality is my parents and my grandparents don't. They still get in the car and listen to the radio because that's what they were raised to do. And when you begin to understand that statistically, the primary demographic in which we are buying distressed properties from, I don't care if you're owner financing, building a rental portfolio, fix and flip, it doesn't matter. We're all generating motivated seller leads. If you go back and look at your closings, the majority of those are going to be people that are over the age of 50. They don't stream music. And so when people hear that, it's like, oh my gosh, it is the very thing that gets me in front of who my target audience is. I just didn't think people listen to it because I don't listen to it. And I go, that's because you confuse yourself with your demographic. The second one you absolutely nailed, and that is, well, it's not affordable. That's an absolute myth, but most people, if you ask them today, well, I'm probably got to spend about $10K a month to be on radio. The average spend on radio across the country, I think at this point we've worked in almost every state with people that we've helped set this up. It's somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a month, which people go, you've got to be kidding me. And I go, it's just because you made the assumption that it was expensive. You actually never delved into it to realize that you can buy radio like you buy your real estate deals at a wholesale price. And that's what we do. we're buying radio about 25 cents on the dollar. And that's what I learned to do doing radio over the last 10 years. And that's why it's so profitable and why we get a good, consistent ROI of $3 to $4 return. So we fundamentally triple to quadruple our marketing spend. And we've had those numbers for about the last 10 years.
Wow. Now, is that AM and or FM radio? Because I know those are different, right? And I know that, the grandparents, for instance, they're probably listening to AM radio, sports, and maybe even some oldies and that. I think it's still put on an AM, right? I think so. I don't know. I don't listen to radio anymore. But
no, absolutely. So this is not rocket science. All I have to ask you is this: what type of music do your grandparents or your parents listen to? Here's the thing: people are loyal to the generation of music in which they were raised in. So what I love about radio is it's not a buckshot spray and pray approach. It's actually very niche because people that are 20 years old do not listen to the music that 55-year-old people listen to. So when you go to a station and you're doing something like, old school kind of soft rock, right? Or classical music, or kind of that old school country like Willie Nelson, right? What you're finding is you're getting primarily in front of the demographic that you want, and you don't have to worry about the people that don't fit that demographic hearing your ad because they don't listen to that music for the most part. And so it actually becomes a very niched approach. And absolutely, AM works as well. We know that generation loves talk radio. So, a lot of the political stations, different stuff like that, tend to be great places to advertise as well.
Interesting. So you said you help people get into, you help students get into really doing that type of marketing, right? Radio marketing, is that right?
Yeah, I kind of sat on this pretty quietly for about the past 10 years, scratching my head. How in the world has the entire real estate industry overlooked this? Which they have. I mean, I tell people all the time, go to YouTube, Google it, see if you can find anyone talking about it, because I like to say that there's virtually like no competition. Like, turn on the radio going down the road for the next week and see if you have any investors in your small town, midtown, or large city advertising on radio. I can almost assure you won't find anyone. Now, you might hear a real estate agent. You might hear a coach coming in to do a training on real estate for a week, right? Like a Dan Merrill. But you're not going to hear someone consistently and locally putting out an advertisement to help people in distressed situations. And so once I realized that I didn't want to take over the entire country, I decided to kind of move and get into some other businesses that I'm more passionate about. I opened it up. I said, man, what do I care if somebody's in New York or out in California advertising on radio? I'll just keep the little moat that I have in my Texas area, and we'll show people how to do this in other areas. And two of my opinion of the greater benefits of radio that you're not getting with a lot of the approaches you originally talked about is radio does two things. It builds your brand by creating celebrity status. So we understand that something happens psychologically in us as humans via television, radio, even podcasts now, and social media, in which we elevate a human because they are on those platforms. So here's what happens in the mind of somebody that's older. They hear you on the radio and they go, man, that person's in season. You can't advertise on the radio unless you know what you're talking about. These are the assumptions that the overall public makes. So by the time they get to you and talk to you, you have to understand you're already a celebrity. You become a celebrity in your own town. And if you don't believe this works, everybody has that one lawyer in their town that has the billboards, the TV ads, and the radio. And I guarantee you, if you're out in public and you see him, you're going to point him out to the next person that you're with and go, oh, dude, it's that attorney. And they're like, oh, yeah, I see that guy's ads all the time, right? Doesn't matter if it's the Hammer or whatever it is. We all have those. And what you're doing in that moment is you're putting that person on a pedestal. And why are you doing that? Because that is the psychology of mass marketing or mass media. And then the other thing you get is what I love is instant credibility. So let me say this. If you start a relationship off a text blast, you got to go a long ways down the know you, like you, trust you path, because they're calling you because they have no choice. But the reality is they already have kind of sized you up as a shark because you spam them. When you get to somebody and they've reached you on radio, they already know you, like you, trust you. They hear your ads all the time. They're actually surprised, like with students that we have set up that are answering the calls themselves. They can't believe that the person that's on the radio actually picked up the phone, because they just expect that there's going to be some gatekeeper between you, because that's the level at which they're raising you up. And so what I find particularly for newbies is a couple things. Number one, if you got guys in your market that are 10 years ahead of you and you're like, how do I catch up? You can catch up with them very quickly utilizing the power of mass media like that. Because someone that hears you on the radio doesn't know that you haven't only been in business for 4 months. They're going to assume that you've been there forever, which is really key. And then it really helps with competition, because do they want to deal with someone that spammed them via direct mail? Or do they want to deal with the local celebrity that they talk to on radio? So if you do have competition, you beat people out. But what I find is you actually have very little competition, because you're not list dependent. You're not hitting the same people that everyone else is hitting with all those different methods. You're talking to people that have never gotten a postcard in the mail, never been text blasted. So therefore you do higher profit deals, because you're not competing against 5 or 6 other investors.
Yeah, you know what? All that stuff is extremely valid. I mean, especially that demographic too, because back when they were watching TV or listening to the radio, if you were on the radio, you must be a star of some kind,
Absolutely.
right? And just like you said before, they assume a certain qualification to get on the radio, even if it is just an ad, right? They don't just put any type of music on there. They put high paid people on there that play this music for everyone's enjoyment, right? That kind of thing, right? So by really associating yourself with all these other folks that are on here too, it's kind of like you're elevating your brand and your persona, right? By being on the radio. It's huge.
Build your brand. I can guarantee you, if someone's listening right now and they're doing bandit signs, I assure you they're not putting their company name on there. Do bandit signs work? Absolutely. You can get deals off them. But you have to begin with the end in mind. Are you playing the short game, or are you playing the long game? The short game is, well, I'm just going to generate leads, but I'm not really going to think much about the quality of my brand. So therefore, I'm going to hide it, which most people do. Or if you dare to put it on those things, you're probably not going to have a very reputable brand in your market, because you're spamming people. But if you're really begin with the end in mind, you understand the greatest asset you have long-term, particularly if you're in a city, is your brand. Because at some point that brand becomes trusted, right? Just like all the other brands, I don't care if it's Coca-Cola, Nike, et cetera, you can do that for your company. And then, you start to become magnetic. And people do business with you because they trust your brand, and you're everywhere. You're on radio. They hear you all the time. And that's a really powerful position to be in. But I don't think a lot of real estate investors really think at that level. And I definitely encourage the newbies to kind of get that as quickly as possible and begin working on the brand right away.
Yeah. And I would also say that this is something you don't want to take on by yourself, because if you're going to drop thousands of dollars on an ad, you better have your messaging down correctly. You better have your tone, your voice tone, your intonations, your script, all that stuff needs to be on point. Otherwise, it's just wasting money, right? And it sounds to me like you also help people with all that stuff too, like what to say, how to say it, when to say it, the schedule, the whole 9 yards, right?
We have a turnkey model. We literally, it's a plug and play down to the script we use, to helping people choose the very best stations in their market, how to negotiate down to 25 cents on the dollar. We tell them when to advertise. Again, it's just completely plug and play. Taking what I do in my business that I've split tested for 10 years, that's what coaching is. I don't really ever like to start things from scratch. I'd rather just pay for speed. It's worth it every time not to have to trial and error the process. If I can find somebody that has spent time split testing something and has a proven model, I'll pay for it all day. And so that's what we've done. We split tested it for 10 years down to the exact ad to use. I mean, we talked about it, even to how you should sound when you record that, from an enthusiasm standpoint to tone to all of those things, they matter. And so somebody can take exactly what we're doing, plug it right in their business. Of course, everyone likes to add their own little flair on it, which we encourage people to do, make it yours. But man, you can plug it in. Here's the thing. If we look at something like cold calling, right? We know that if you start a cold calling program, and all of these things work, I don't ever argue that they don't work. They're just very different. It's going to take you 3-6 months a lot of times to do your first deal. Usually what I see data-wise is it's closer to 6 months, right? With radio, you're getting calls immediately. Most of our students are literally executing contracts. I mean, the vast majority within the first 30 to 60 days of going live. And what they're seeing is this is the highest quality lead that you can generate. These people are excited to talk to you. Can you imagine that? Picking up the phone and you don't even have to think twice about, like, oh, is this person about to yell at me because I spammed them? But they're excited to talk to you and they're not talking to anyone else. And so I'm obviously super passionate about radio because that and television are the only two things I've ever seen that generate that quality of a lead. There's nothing else that touches them.
Right. And I mean, if anybody's been following this show anyway, they know that I'm huge on mentoring and coaching. I'm huge on that. And by really bringing in the right people to help you accelerate your growth, there's nothing else like it. Yeah, it costs money to do it, but to your point too, Chris, it's kind of like it accelerates you, gets you in front of the audience, and gets people engaged with what you're saying. Right. That part it's enormous. Now, the thing is that how do people know that the stuff's actually working? Is it because you're timing that? I'm assuming that when it plays, like say at 2 a.m. or whatever, when people are getting off of a late shift and or maybe they're up at night because they're worried about whatever is going on in the world, and they hear the ad. Are you guys like timing it that way? And you guys are timing the incoming calls, and do you have live people picking up? Like, how does all that work?
Yeah, I mean, this is great. So a lot of people, if they're newbies right now, are trying to juggle the 9 to 5. And I have a lot of respect for people that are trying to step out of the paycheck world and become a full-time investor. I mean, it takes some hustle. And on top of that, they're married, with like 2 or 3 kids at home. So it's a tough piece. So they don't have time for things to waste their time. And they're not going to answer calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we only advertise during prime time, which is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so what that means is that when an ad plays, you're getting a direct response. You're providing a call to action. So they're literally picking up the phone and calling you when the ad plays. So you want to know something really cool about radio? Is they tell you 24 hours in advance when your ads are going to play. So you already know when your phone is going to ring, and most of your calls are going to come in between Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is during prime time hours. So you totally are coordinating a schedule that already fits with your work hours. And your phone isn't going to ring off the hook. It's not like direct mail, where you're generating a high volume of calls but low quality leads. Radio is so much more manageable. And here's probably the biggest thing I learned about radio. I thought coming in that the primary people that would pick this up would be really seasoned, right? That's what it seems like. That was my misconception. What I realized is this has become one of the better marketing channels, not just for the seasoned person, for the new person, because when they're working that 9 to 5, most people have $1,000 to $2,000 a month to spend. They're already spending that on direct mail, if not more right now. And so they convert that over, and then all of a sudden they've got a lower volume of call. They know when the phone is going to ring. Of course, we do, to answer your questions, we answer these calls live because they're such a high quality lead. And they're stepping back and they're saying this, Chris, I'm so glad that I finally launched a marketing channel that didn't feel like I just created another job for myself. Because I'm sorry, a lot of these other marketing channels, they're like having an entire another job. Right? We used to send 100,000 pieces of direct mail a month. It took a solid team to manage something like that. It was just an absolute headache. Did it work? Yeah, we were getting a 1 to 4 return. This is back in 16 and 17 when it wasn't as saturated. But man, I can tell you, man, it was a massive headache. And people that are newer don't want that type of headache. And so radio is a great, great fit because it's super manageable. It's really low maintenance.
Yeah. Now, what's the cost per lead generally, like say on a per month basis between, like, say, direct mail and a radio? Understanding, of course, with radio, you're getting a higher quality lead because it's inbound and they want you. They're not calling you because I hate your ad. I mean, maybe they will, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean, cost per lead is going to change from market to market. It doesn't matter if we're talking about radio. You're not going to really find any consistency. I mean, I'll give you ours. Ours is $72 per lead in Dallas-Fort Worth, right? So those are my numbers. But what you care about and the metric that really only matters is what we call the dollar per dollar return. So what I'm telling you is for every dollar you spend on radio, you're going to make $3 to $4 back in return. If you talk to any CFO out there, anyone that understands and manages the finance is a business. Like we have a chief financial officer. I'll tell you, man, if you're tripling to quadrupling your marketing spend and the sense of profit back to you, that's a real healthy place to be. And I know, again, unfortunately, we live in the world of real estate, and I hear numbers like, well, I got a 1 to 10 and a 1 to 15. And I'm like, it's not long-term sustainable. Like, I'm giving you the actual numbers. We consistently get a $3 to $4 return, which is great. And if I can have that consistently on a marketing channel, I'm in. And I used to get that on direct mail. I used to be 1 to 4, and then it got saturated and it dropped to 1 to 2. And you can't really run a great marketing channel and leverage it and scale it if you're only getting a 1 to 2 return. You got to be up there between that 1 to 3 to 1 to 4 for it to make sense. And the thing about radio is it's just tried and true. It stayed at 1 to 3 to 1 to 4 consistently.
Yeah, but I think a big part of it though too is, just like you said a second ago, when they're calling in, your folks are answering the call, right? Like there's a live
Yeah, we answer these live. We have designated people that answer these live and escalate them to our acquisition managers.
Got it. So they're the ones. Are they typically locking them up on the first call, or does it require a back and forth, or a call you back, or whatever? Like how does that part work?
No, I mean, our system is phone rings. We have what are called calling assistants. These are fundamentally the pre-qualifiers to make sure that we are not escalating anything to our acquisition managers that's not either warm or hot, because the best way to frustrate a great salesperson is give them cold leads. So that call comes in. If it's good, we use a system called Grasshopper via like a call rail. And so they can do a live transfer. So literally they push a button, it rings to all the acquisition managers at the same time. Whichever one grabs it gets that escalated lead. And man, they're setting the appointment right there to go out for our inspector to take a look at the property.
Wow. Nice. Now, what strategies do you guys typically use to eventually lock up these contracts and make people feel good that they made the right decision to actually call in the first place?
You're just talking about from like a sales strategy standpoint?
Yeah.
Without question, it's that, and my acquisition managers have always been really good about this. What wins above all the strategies, all those type of things, is when you bring in acquisition managers that truly care about the totality of people's lives. So we get deals in which we've been outbidded, but we win those because the people that we have on our sales side have a high level of emotional intelligence. When we hire them, we assess them. And so what we look for is a high altruistic drive, which means that by nature, they have a motivation for generosity. And so because they listen, because they care, because they ask great questions, because they're not pushy and salesy, like a lot of the people out there, we win people primarily because we take great care of them. As much as I say that all the sales tactics, do they matter? Yeah, they play into it. But I think, in my opinion, I've come to learn that just caring about people beats a lot of the other sales tactics out there. People make decisions on feeling, what they feel. I mean, we all want to feel like we're objective when we go buy something, but we know we make decisions and emotions. And so what is that emotional decision? It really comes down to, do I connect and trust this person that's, giving me the opportunity to buy something?
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it too, especially in the wholesale world, is because if someone is calling in, they need help. They need help. They need someone to listen to them and even offer them a suggestion as to what they can do to get out of that jam, And I have a feeling that just based on what's going on in our economy today, we print out $5 trillion in the last 12 months. I think there's going to be a lot of people hurting here in the next 12 months because of the coming inflation. So there's definitely going to be a need to really have that type of, how should I say, service-oriented approach.
It's that helpful heart approach. It's, again, either when you look at people, you see dollar signs, or you actually see a human being. Yeah. And people know the difference. I can tell when people look at me and see dollar signs. Like, I hate that feeling. You feel used. You feel like, man, this person does not care about me whatsoever. So
yeah. No. Hey, listen. Every time a new press release hits the wire on one of our deals or a new development or whatever, my inbox on LinkedIn goes crazy. So yeah, I know all about it, man. I know all about it. All right. So if someone's listening right now and they're looking for maybe to take that next step, they're not really sure what to do, what sort of bulletproof advice would you offer them?
Yeah. If somebody's just starting out and they're on the new side, I really believe that one of the most important things during that time is the right information. And so, and making sure you're picking the right books to read, getting into the right communities and masterminds, hiring the right coaches. I look back and I think one of the bigger mistakes I made was I was trying to think that I could navigate those first few years by myself. And so it's just a waste of time. There are too many people that are way too far ahead of you. If you're new, that, man, you don't need to come in and be massively creative in the beginning. You just need to come in and do a great job of duplicating and copying people that are doing well. As they say in school, you're reprimanded for copying, but once you get out into the business world, you're actually pretty smart if you take the time to copy, because you don't need to learn from experiences that people have already walked through that can help you sidestep them. So I think that's an important piece in the beginning.
Excellent. Great. Do you have any downloads or anything else like that on your website?
Yeah, man. So if you're listening and you're like, man, this whole radio thing just makes sense to me, then I encourage you, man, do your due diligence, find out if it's a good fit for you. We do provide exclusivity in markets because I want to preserve radio. I don't want it to get saturated like all the other marketing channels have. So you'll want to check and see if your market is available. But go to wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Again, that's wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Book a call, talk with one of our people, and see if we're able to get in and help you out.
Excellent. And hey, guys, if you are in the wholesale biz, definitely check this out. I mean, I think it'll give you an edge over many of the other wholesalers out there. And I think that because there's so much competition out there right now, you kind of need to differentiate yourself, right? And especially for those people that are looking to jump into real estate, it's maybe worth the investment, So definitely do as Chris says, check it out, check it out. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Chris, just like you said, you can reach out to his website there, or you can also go to COSAinvestments.com and go to the contact page there. You can also find him there. Hope you got some insight on how you can leverage wholesaling and other types of marketing that you probably never considered to get to that financial freedom we talked about before. Thank you so much for listening in. Greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next episode. Take care. Hey, Agostino here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text the word books to 202-410-4202 to receive weekly book recommendations from me.